Hi everybody, this is William Eidelman from the Milky Way Mirror of Reality. And today I'm going to talk about science. Science is way overrated. Now science is a wonderful thing, but it's a method. It is not a know-it-all being. Science is not God. Friedrich Nietzsche said God is dead, and many people have embraced science as the replacement for God. But it doesn't work that way. Science is just a method that we use to try and come to the truth. And sometimes it helps us, but it depends on the people doing the science using the scientific method. And the scientific method is a way of bringing objectivity out of our subjectivity. But there's no way to escape from our subjectivity. And so it's not a good idea to rely on science that much in the sense of expecting it to bring an answer that's objective and isn't going to change. Because the scientific method is such that as we go deeper and deeper, we learn new things that show that the old things that we believed in are wrong. And, you know, my field has been medicine, although I have an interest in all fields of science. But my profession has been medicine. And my father was a professor of psychiatry, one of the medical fields. And so in medicine, basically we use what we have, and as medicine evolved, originally it was together with spirituality. The medicine people, the medicine men and women of primitive tribes were also the spiritual healers as well as the physical healers. They weren't separate. Then eventually science and religion kind of went off in their own different directions, for better or for worse. But, and it's kind of coming full circle and they're coming back together. But that's a different story for a different video. Primitive healers learn from their elders, who learn from their elders, who learn from their elders, and eventually, who knows exactly how it all started, but there was a certain amount of where primitive people would see animals using herbs for their own healing, and that would give them the idea to try it. It's quite possible that it just came through intuition or through divine guidance, through direct knowing. We don't know exactly how it arose, but the primitive people eventually developed their own armamentarium of herbal remedies and nutritional remedies. And these passed down through the years and were used, and they were used because they work. And the primitive medicine people didn't need some scientific authority to tell them, because they already knew what worked and what didn't work, to a certain degree, and of course within limitations. But they did a great job, or they wouldn't have succeeded in evolving and moving as many of the medicines that are in use today were originally discovered in this way, and they're plant extracts that eventually were put into drugs and pills and things like that. But many other herbal and nutritional remedies didn't make it into the pharmaceutical pharmacopoeia, but they're still out there and work, and you can find them at the health food store, and you can talk to naturopaths and herbalists, and there's a growing number of medical doctors who are now knowledgeable about all of this. And of course there haven't been scientific studies on many or most of these kind of things, because who's going to pay for them? So that's where the bias comes in. So people can say, oh, there's no science to prove that such and such of a thing will work, and that's because the studies just haven't been done, because who's going to pay for it? But on the other hand, let's say that I remember when I was a kid and I used to read my dad's psychiatric journals that came to the house. And I remember one time reading something about a drug that was used by psychiatrists. And I read in this journal that this particular drug didn't work. And I showed it to my dad, and he said, oh, I already knew that from my own experience. He tried it out on patients and it didn't work, so he already knew. So double-blind studies are great for the double-blind, but if you have eyes to see, then you can just maybe see it without the studies. But I'm not putting down double-blind studies, but I'm also not putting them up on the pedestal, because the real answer isn't going to come from double-blind studies, because the double-blind study is too limited. It only shows one thing. Does this ingredient work or not work to get the effect that you're looking for? And it can show that, but it won't show what's the long-term effects, and it won't show the side effects. So the only way really to know if a drug works, the real gold standard of research, is to follow something over years with lots and lots of people, thousands of people over years, and then you know for sure if something actually works and benefits people. Because something might, like for example, statins will reduce your blood pressure, will reduce your blood cholesterol, but do they really extend your length of life, and do they extend your quality of life? And that certainly doesn't come out of double-blind studies, and it looks like that in many cases that the research actually shows that, oops, wait a minute, when thousands of people take statins for years, they don't live longer. In fact, they live shorter, and they have a whole long list of side effects that can ruin their lives. So we have to be very careful with the scientific method and thinking that we know what science says, because it doesn't exactly always say what we think it says. One of my favorite subjects is bioelectromagnetism. And many people have said and still say, oh, science has proven that the body does not have a bioenergy field. There's no such thing. And there's some truth to that statement, in that in the 1800s and 1900s, there was a lot of scientific research to try and prove that any electricity found in the body was really an artifact. It wasn't a real thing. In other words, there's ions, positively and negatively charged molecules in the body, and these over short distances operate like a battery. But there is research, different research, that shows that that the body doesn't really have an electric current in it. That what the nerve impulse that flows down the nerve is not a true electric current. And there was a Nobel Prize given for the fact that it really is, they call it an action potential, which are the ions going back and forth across the cell membrane down through the nerve cell, and that it looks like a current, but it isn't really. And that was kind of the final nail in the coffin of the body being electromagnetic. And based on that, in around 1909, plus or minus a year, there was a commission that upgraded and standardized medical practice and education, was what they said, And their statement was that since it's been proven that the body is not electromagnetic, that no electromagnetic therapies could work, and therefore they were all outlawed. So we had believed that science said the body is not electromagnetic. And this was actually disproven in basic science research done by a Dr. Robert O. Becker, MD, an orthopedic surgeon in upstate New York. And his research in the 60s, beautifully done, and I'll talk about this in more detail in another video. But he proved that the body is literally a liquid crystal with the same type of solid-state electromagnetism as modern technology. And here we are, like 60 years later, 50 years later, and very few people know about this. It's still, and that's, well, let's just say that there are vested interests that don't want people to know about easy ways to heal themselves. And they also don't want to know that because the brain is a liquid crystal with a lot of bioelectromagnetic currents and fields that can be controlled and manipulated from the outside. So we can be, and probably are being, manipulated in these ways. This is what is shown by the scientific method. The body is a liquid crystal. And this is really good news in a lot of ways, because the reason that they proved, or tried to prove, thought they had proven that the body is not electromagnetic, was because the electromagnetic body would be the bridge for the soul. That if the soul existed, it would have to come into the body through electromagnetism, and people would talk about feeling energy and all of this, and then to say, oh no, it's all your imagination. Science has proven there is no such thing, but in fact, science has proven that there is. And that's going to be one of the things in my upcoming series of videos, that this is amazing news that the body can heal itself, that we can heal others, and that there are many, many, many different ways that electric currents, microelectric currents, micromagnetic fields, megamagnetic fields, with the right kind of pulsations and frequencies and waveforms and sound. So many, many different types of frequencies and light can be used for healing. And that's going to be one of the things that I'm really, really excited about telling you about and showing you, ways that you can heal yourself. So the problem really is that the scientific method has not been brought to bear on many, many important subjects that we need to look at through the scientific method. But in the meantime, we just use our past experience. So in terms of the energy medicine, we have experience with different kind of technologies that, you know, let's say in my practice of medicine, that I've seen things that really have worked fantastic for treating pain and depression and anxiety. And I've seen some things work in even treating cancer, many different kind of diseases. And one of my favorite things is something that melts the craving for a cigarette in 2 minutes every time, and it works for other addictive drugs too. So we have a lot of wonderful therapies out there, and then, but my favorite one probably, and the one that's maybe the most important, is that the body itself, with its own energy fields, can be used as a healing modality. There is a way that you can generate healing energy through your hands to heal other people and yourself, and I'll be demonstrating this and showing this and working with people through the internet. So anyway, but don't depend, when everyone talks about science and the scientific method, and science says this and science says that, be cautious. When people talk about science, it's the scientific method. When they say, what does science say? Be careful, be cautious. Okay? See you next time.